Welcome back to the Everything Property Podcast. One thing I've noticed lately talking to a lot of people out there that are looking to purchase an investment property or that are along that journey is that saving that first deposit is undoubtedly what seems like an incredibly difficult task and is a task that a lot of people get stuck in or give up during. So I thought I'd put together a little bit of a session today, a bit of a podcast, a bit of a video. If you're either listening to this or watching this, you'll still get the same amount of value from it. Obviously, got some visual stuff here on the whiteboard if you are able to watch it. But if you are just going to listen to it, then you'll still be able to get some value from it also. One thing I like to, and probably a rule of life that I've realized lately, is that I think about life as seasons. There's going to be seasons that you're going to be sipping your cocktails on the European coast. There's going to be seasons where you're going to feel like everything's tough, everything's failing, everything's difficult. There's going to be seasons of up and down. Some seasons are shorter than others, some are harder than others. You don't know when each of them start and each of them stop. However, I always think of and frame my life that in seasons. In the moment, currently at the moment, I'm in a season of putting in a lot of hard work, a lot of effort, a lot of hours. I know it always won't be like this. However, I know that's the particular season that I'm in. And if you're saving up for that first deposit, or you're saving up for your next deposit, or you're trying to save money, you're in that saving money season. Now, you're going to have to make sacrifices. You're going to have to say no to things. You're going to have to cut things out of what you're usually doing. And that is just the season that you're in. That is just that season. Now, depending on how much you earn, that season can last for 6 months. It could be 12 months. It could be 24 months. I don't know where you're starting from, but saving that first deposit to get into the property investing journey is incredibly difficult. For me, I can remember some of the first deposit saving for working 2 to 3 jobs, not doing too much fun stuff, putting that money away, and then when you make that informed and educated purchase, what you'll realize is that property will then, because you've leveraged, $100 grand into a $550,000 property, that property can then grow at a rate that is quicker than the amount that you can save, which helps you to get into the door of property 2, 3, 4 and build out and so on and so forth. So a lot of people try to overcomplicate things. A lot of people try to make a whole bunch of systems, but I like to keep it super simple. Look, is this financial advice? No. Am I a certified financial license, whatever you would call it? Definitely not. I'm a property investor and developer. I've used this particular strategy. I can remember I've saved over $100,000 using this particular strategy of my own money, relatively average income, nothing too big, but I've done it. It works. I can testify for it. And if you're out there struggling or you want a bit of a different frame or perspective on things, then this will definitely be, a way of doing it. So for the majority of us out there, we're getting paid. We work for a company, business, whoever it is, and we get paid. Which is also known as we are a PAYG employee. We're paid a salary. Some people are paid weekly. Some people are paid fortnightly, and some people are paid monthly. If you're paid monthly, you'll know and you'll hopefully be on some sort of budget, because when it gets to the end of week 3 and the start of week 4, and you've splurged for those entire first 3 weeks, that last week's going to be, living on bread, water, and fumes. So you need to be diligent no matter when you get paid. For me, I like to think of it as almost out of sight, out of mind. So the way that I do it and the way that I break down this sort of principle is, let's take a fortnightly pay. Now, for the purpose of this particular episode, I'm going to assume, and I hear there's arguments all the time about what is the average or what is the typical Australian salary. I'm going to use a salary of $90,000 as a base or as a working point. Obviously, that particular salary is someone going to be maybe a couple of years out of university study, or that's been in their career for a few years, maybe a mid-20s, maybe a late 20s, maybe early 30s. You could even be young 20s. Doesn't really matter how old you are. And obviously, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I earn heaps more than that, or I earn heaps less, it also works off a percentage basis. So I would use those percentages to keep in mind when you're structuring it for your own. And again, you can tweak different things because, as I always say, I don't know where you're starting from. I don't know what your start position is. You could be a single parent that has an entire family to provide for, maybe a mortgage as well. If that is you and your circumstance, then obviously these would need to be tweaked because your expenses would be higher than typically someone that's living at home compared to their mum and dad. So keep that in mind. My starting point is a $90,000 salary. Now, I'm going to break it up into fortnightly because I feel that's where most people get paid. Most companies are too lazy to do it weekly and monthly. I don't know too many people these days that are paid monthly. You still might be, but let's break it down. So a $90,000 salary, you would be paid about $2,700 per fortnight. Now, the way that I like to think of it and split it up, you can do this if you've got one bank or if you've got multiple banks. There's a few different ways to do it, but I like to split that up, and I use what's called the SDN method. I haven't made this up. I haven't, some proprietary limited information, but there's 3 ways to do it. There's 3 buckets that you need to split up each and every time you get paid. The first one's savings. The second one is discretionary spending. So S is for savings, D bucket is for discretionary, and N is for non-discretionary. So to break them down, obviously the savings is the money that you are putting away for you to be able to get to that deposit, for you to be able to save for that deposit that you're saving up for, your investment property. Discretionary is things that you have discretion over. So they're the little things that creep in, that you buy, that maybe you spend money on. That's going down to the pub, that's, buying a new shirt on an online store. That's discretionary. Non-discretionary, I like to think of it as non-negotiables. These are things such as bills. Before you break this down and you do this 3 bucket task, you need to have a really good handle on the bills that you currently pay each month. People tell me they think they know what they're getting, what they think their bills are. Okay, well, what about this? What about that? What about that? I want you to go through, and this is one thing that we say in the course too, but go through your bank statements and highlight what is a bill versus what is something that you spent, money at a servo, blah, blah, blah. I want you to list out and then divide for a fortnightly basis, fuel, groceries, internet, rent, all those bills that come out. I want you to list them all on here. So that's step 1, is you're going to list out all those bills that come up. And generally, if you look at an entire month of spendings, you'll see all the bills that come out weekly, fortnightly, and monthly. So look at least a month or 2 to 3 months, and you're going to list out all your bills that you have, right? The second step is going to be, after you've listed them, you're going to go through those bills, and I want you to have a really good, hard look at yourself and say, what bills are those that are actually non-discretionary, and what bills are those come into subscriptions, Netflix, all those kinds of things. And just see what they are, because there's a good chance you might be able to clean up a couple of $100 a month in terms of the bills, those ongoing bills that you have that you're not either using. Like it could be, it could be an online subscription platform that you might be paying 50, 60, $80 a month. Are you still using that? Are you still getting value from that? Do you absolutely need it? It might be that you've got 5 streaming platforms. Maybe we can cut that down to maybe 1 or 2. You have one for movies, you have one for sport. You don't need 5, 6, 7, or 8. Maybe you can get the family pack with someone else to share the cost of that. 2 is going to be review. Review all those bills that come in your account, and I want you to be an absolute savage and go through and get rid of the ones that, it could be an old gym fee. Are you still going to the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week? Is there something you can cancel? Sit down, do it. The gyms try to make it an absolute shit fight to cancel, but just do it. A lot of those big gym models is they make that amount that they charge you per fortnight or per month or per week little enough for you to not be bothered, but it does stack up. Think if we're trying to save 50 or $100,000 a year and you're paying $20 a week for a gym membership that you're not using, that right there is $1,000. So if you can clean up a few of them, that's 1% of $100,000. We might find 5% of savings just there and then. So I want you to not only list out your bills, I want you to be an absolute savage in review and say, what do we actually need and what don't we need? The next one is going to be absolutely eye-opening, and that's your discretionary spending. The issue that I feel like almost every single person on planet Earth has is that they think they know what they're spending, tappa, but when they go through and calculate it, they will be absolutely shocked. When you start to add up, those takeaway on the weekend, eating out on a weekend, breakfast or brunch, you also put in there, you're getting sweets at the servo when you're driving home, you may be doing an online shop and all that kind of stuff. Same thing with discretionary. 1 is going to be review, and step 2 is going to be tally up. Review what you're spending in that month or in those 2-3 months. And then you're going to tally up how much you're spending on discretionary spend, which is food, which is shit you don't need, which is 1,000 beers at the pub on a Friday night, which is putting money in the pokies, all those kind of things. Now, I know you're going to say to me, Dave, I want to live my life, blah, blah, blah. Brother, sisters, live your life once you buy the investment property. Once you buy the investment property and you feel that you only need to put away $150 a week, then you can go live in your life. Remember I said at the start of this episode, we live our life in seasons. We are in the season of grind and hard work. Maybe we need to say no to a few of those extracurriculum activities. And the next is obviously savings. If you have started this yet, or if you haven't, this is the calculation. This is the calculation that you're going to do. Is how much do I need in savings? How much do I need to have saved? So if you're getting into the property market and you go, okay, look, I need to have $100,000 saved. Okay, I need 100 grand. How much do I have in savings? At the moment, I've got $30,000 in savings. Okay, I need 70 grand saved. So what I'm going to do, let's say you need to save up $70,000. I'll take my fortnightly pay, I'd times it by 35%. 35% of my fortnightly pay is $945. Now, how many times do I have to save $945 per fortnight? How many fortnights do I have to save to hit 70K in savings? The answer to that is 74 fortnights, which, if I times it by 2, is 144 weeks. So it's going to take you 3 years. 3 years to hit that savings goal. Now, that's if you're saving 35%. So how do we break this down? So if I'm earning $2,700, again, remember, I don't know your current circumstances, so you might need to tweak this a bit, but a good savings goal is 30 to 35% of your salary. You should be doing all you can to try to hit that per fortnight, per week, per month, whatever that payment cycle is. You take 35% of that and you put it in your savings straight away, so 945. To keep this on a percentage basis, discretionary spending, if you're spending, in my opinion, remember I'm no expert, but in my opinion, if you're spending more than 15% of your fortnightly pay on discretionary spending, more, it's probably too much. So that's $405. Which means 50% of my salary, 50% of my fortnightly salary, which means I'm left with $1,350, 50% of my fortnightly savings goes to my bills, goes to my rent, goes to all that kind of stuff. If you're looking at this and you're thinking, shit, Dave, that's huge. That's a lot of savings, blah, blah, blah. This is what I did to try to meet those principles. Now, the first and foremost, I can hear it already before I've even released the episode that people say, if I'm earning 90 grand and I'm getting 2,700 per fortnight, 1,350 is just not enough for bills and all that kind of stuff. List and review. The biggest bill that's going to be in this is going to be your accommodation bill. If you're living at home, you eat swa. If you're renting, you need to get creative with your renting. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If you are renting by yourself in a one-bedroom apartment, that is the highest per bedroom rate of renting that you can do as an individual. What do I mean by that? If you go to a suburb where one bedrooms are 500, I guarantee you 2 bedrooms aren't 1,000, and I guarantee you 3 bedrooms aren't 1,500. Just doesn't work like that. 2 bedrooms would be 750, 3 bedrooms would be 900. So unfortunately, remember the season we're in. We're in 3 years of tough grind season. We need to be creative with our accommodation here. So if you're living at home, you don't have to worry about it. Mum and dad, sweet. If you can live with family, friends, to keep that down, perfect. If you're living by yourself, if you're looking at this saying that's unaffordable, I cannot afford that, it's probably because you're living on your own or the place or area that you're living is extremely expensive. This is what I mean. This is what I mean when I say you need to be productive, and I'll show you what I did. When I first lived in the city, I said, look, I'm going to get a flatmate. I'm going to halve the rent and make it easier. I lived in Randwick, Sydney's eastern suburbs, a few years ago now. Now, I was paying $550 in rent. Okay? $550 in rent. So already, if I half that with someone, I'm going to be paying $275 or $550 a fortnight each in rent, which if my other costs are $1,350, it gives me $750 for all my other bills, which is actually a fair bit of money. Rent, groceries, all that kind of stuff. I know it adds up, but this is how savvy I was. $550 in rent. What I realized in the particular suburb that I lived in and in the Sydney's eastern suburbs is garage spaces are at an absolute premium. So I found an apartment that had not only a garage space, but also had a driveway in front. What I was able to do is I was able to rent out the garage space, the lock-up garage, to a photographer to store his gear, $70 a week. $70 a week. Now, the way that I didn't split it 50-50 with my flatmate at the time. Reason is because I took the bigger bedroom with the built-ins and I took the car space. However, I think I was maybe paying $290. Take off my $70, I was paying $220 a week in rent, $440 a fortnight in rent. I just told you on 90 grand, I'm giving you $1,350 a fortnight. $440 of that is on rent. It means I almost have $1,000 in my fortnight to pay all those other bills, which my friends, I can assure you, you can afford to pay. So go through your list of bills. Accommodation is going to be your biggest killer if you can't live with someone that you know for free. You need to be a little bit creative. How I would get this down is I would get a flatmate. I'd live with 1 or 2 flatmates. I get it, and I can hear you now say, hey Dave, I want to live by myself. Suck it up. 2-3 years, suck it up. Because if you do, then you reap the rewards of the investment property, and that will grow and you can keep that forever. But suck up for 2-3 years, live with a mate, live with a friend. Chat to a friend, put a story up, friend of a friend, those kinds of things. Get creative with your accommodation would be my tip. You can even go in and lease a room if you want. You can take on the lease, you can sublease as long as you let the landlord know that you're subletting all those subletting different bedrooms out. But if you're living in a 1-bedroom, I'm sorry to tell you, like I can find suburbs where there's 1-bedrooms for $1,000 a week. You go to Bondi, there's 1-bedrooms for $1,000 a week. You go a few streets back, you can get a 2-bedder for $750. So obviously the more people that you can throw into the mix, the cheaper you can make your accommodation, which would be my tip. If you're uncomfortable and you need your own space, you need to either suck it up, get the second bathroom, or rent with friends. Rent with people that you know, people that you can trust. You can vet, you can interview these people, you can go to coffee with them, or you can get a recommendation from a friend of a friend. That is going to be how you decrease your non-discretionary. Now, discretionary spending. If it is above 15%, which I guarantee you it probably is because you're going down to the pub or you're spending money or you're shopping, you're doing all those kinds of things, you need to try to keep it as low as possible to keep savings at 30. Savings rate, 20% is on the lower end, 30% average, and if you're saving anywhere near 40%, you're a freak. So I would do and try to save as much as possible. Now, how I did this and how I was able to save 100 grand in, I think it was about 70 grand I saved for one of my properties. I think it was 2019 possibly. I saved up 100 grand. I think I saved 30, had 30 saved up 70. But how I did this now I get to my number, right? What's going to cost me in bills, discretionary spending, and savings per fortnight. You aren't going to like it, but the best way to do this is to get a second job or second income. It is not to start a side hustle business. Second job, side hustle, two very different things. People go out there and go, oh, I'm going to start a side hustle business. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a big difference between starting it to save up your money versus I'm starting a business on the side for when I quit. If you're starting that side hustle on the side for money, just make sure it's a second job compared to you starting out a business. Why? Because most of the times the business, the e-com, the products, a lot of those businesses are cash intensive at the start. You need a lot of money to start up, to get going, for people to know about you, for people to use you, for people to tell other people about you. It can take you 1 to 2 years before you get up and running and for that business to trade profitably. Compared to if you just got a second job on the weekend. I worked at an events company. Shout out the Bubbling Boys. They'll know that. Anyone that watches me will know that. I used to work a weekend job where we do anywhere between 12 to 15 hours a day on the weekends. The difference between that is it's not taken me 2 years. It's not taken 2 years for me to earn a profit to start earning in the green. I'm earning it straight away. So if it's to save money, I would advise that you get that second job. Now, why? I'll run you through the numbers. I could average anywhere between 20 to 30 hours of a weekend. Yeah, I work 7 days a week. Miserable, I get it. But remember, the season that we're in. 20, which in my opinion, which was anywhere between at $25 an hour. I think there was, obviously there's a bit of tax and stuff on that, but 500 to 750 plus. Now, 500 to 750 plus I used to get on the weekends. Now you can start to see if I did that for a fortnight, I'd have 1,000 to 750. 1,000 to 1,500. 1,000 to 1,500 dollars I'd be bringing in extra that I can start to offset to 3 in. So my goal was always thinking, okay, well, if my bills for the week are $1,350, if my bills for the fortnight are $1,350, are they $1,500, are they $1,600? You might look at this and go, fuck that. You might look at this and go, Dave, my bills are more than $1,500 a fortnight. If you haven't done a list and if you haven't listed out what they are, then don't come at me because you don't know what your bills are. You think you know, but you don't. So do the list, review the list, cull down. Then we start to look at how we can bring in that second income. Can we bring it in weeknights? Can we bring it in on weekends if you're free? Remember, it's not all the time. Now, I might only have to do that weekend job once a fortnight and I can earn my 500 and 700, but I know that can be taken off my bills and I can be able to inch a little bit more ahead, a little bit more ahead, a little bit more ahead. So if I did that weekend job, right, this is where the power comes into play. If I worked that weekend job, I just did 1 day a week, $500. Remember, weekend, hourly rates, la, la, la. And I did that for a year, I'd save $26,000 just on that weekend job. Now you're going to tell me tax and all that kind of stuff. I get it, but whether you have 2 jobs, 5 jobs, 6 jobs, 26 plus 90 is you're still paying like 22 grand a year. So it's not that much additional tax. You might pay, even if you took the 6 grand off, even if we said, look, take 30% off after tax. I can hear people in the comments saying, he hasn't put tax on it. All right, well, look, there's 20 grand. Now I just said this is going to take us 3 years. But in the first year, if I can put an extra 20 grand to it, and I did that for another year, 20 grand. In 2 years, I've reached 40,000 out of the 70 I've need saved just for working a weekend job. And it's only been on 1 day on the weekend. Maybe you pick up 1 afternoon shift or 1 night shift to get those hours, to get those numbers up. But you can see just how quickly it can happen. Now, another thing that I used to do too is my first university degree was in graphic design. So I used to be a freelance graphic designer. What I noticed was going to my 9 to 5 job. For people that know me will know this, but I used to commute from Camden to Sydney CBD. What I noticed when I did that 2-hour commute each way each day for a lot of years is that a lot of time was wasted on the train from Macarthur Station into bloody Wynyard. It's about an hour's trip. So what I did and how I saved more money and created more revenue is that I said, look, I've got a skill set here of graphic design. And so I found a company where I could do some freelance graphic design on the train. I could do the work, then I could send it through and bill them. Maybe I'll do a little bit at night, but that was another way of me. I'm going to be sitting on the train anyway. So I could do this freelance graphic design, and a lot of the bills when I'd invoice, every time I got around $1,500 worth of accrued hours, I used to bill and send them an invoice because I knew if I send them that invoice, that invoice pays for my fortnightly expenses. And remember, there's only 26 fortnights in a year. So we break that down. Am I working a few weekends? Am I working a few extra hours at work? If that second income, for this particular example, so say I was saving $945, if I add in on average an extra $500 a fortnight, an extra, call it $600 a fortnight. If I added it in $600 a fortnight on top of that, that means I'm saving a fortnight $1,545, which 70 grand that I'm not needing to save divided by the $1,545, it actually equals 45 fortnights, which is 90 weeks, which is less than 2 years. So by grinding it out for extra cash, I'm able to wipe an entire year of how long it's going to take me to save up for that. Now think as well, I mean, for my very first property, I actually sold a motorbike, Yamaha TTR 125. I actually sold that to kickstart my savings journey. I think I got maybe 4.5, 5 back in the day. But you need to start being creative in ways to get to that fortnightly savings amount. And to me, it started becoming a game. Word of advice too, when you're putting the money away that you have saved, it works better if that goes into an account you can't see on your online banking, or it goes to a separate account, and that there is no card attached to that account, so you can't go and be tapping your savings on useless shit. Again, if I needed to save up for anything, if I needed to buy any purchases, if I needed to do anything I wanted, I would not take it out of my savings bucket. I would not even take it out of my discretionary spending bucket. I'd take it out of the bucket that I'd get from the additional pay from the second job. Why? Because then it would remain untouched and I could keep going and going and going and going. Another good way to be able to save up that money, and another good way to save that money and to be able to build up that savings amount too, is go through, if you live with your parents, go through mum and dad's house and say, Mum and Dad, let's go through some stuff. What don't you need? What do you need to sell? I can go through and show you guys on my Facebook Marketplace. It's just amazing how many people are surfing on that for shit, for the most randomest things that you have laying around your house. You can find, and like Gary V's this guy that talked about a long time. You can find 5 or 10 grand just worth of shit laying around at your parents' house, at your house, stuff you don't need. You've got a stack of drawers with old technology in it. You can go through, sell all that stuff to bring this, for example, $70,000 down. You might have 5 grand or 10 grand worth of stuff. Then we're only working off 60 grand, and then the 90 weeks drops down to, a lot less. It could be 80 or 70 weeks. And then now we're getting into this situation where it's 18 months. So much more palatable to work. If someone told you and you're struggling to get in the property market, if all you need to do is follow a savings plan, you need to work a day on the weekend, and you just need to be monitoring it, and in 18 months you'd have the money to go into, then you'd be all over that. I guarantee you guys would honestly be all over that. So to summarize the savings plan, I think and I believe if you can aim to save around 30 to 35% of your take-home pay, whether it's weekly, fortnightly, monthly, that's the target. Anything above that is a plus. Anything less than that, let's investigate how we can increase that savings amount. Is it because our discretionary spending is too high? Because if our discretionary spending is above 15%, in my opinion, you're spending a little bit too much on the play money, on the fun money. We need to reel it back in a bit. So try to get discretionary spending as low as possible. Or you might say your discretionary spending is at 0, and if you work an extra, job on the weekend or an extra shift, that money there goes into a separate account. That's fun money. That's labeled fun money, discretionary, any of that kind of stuff. So it might be, Dave, I've actually got more bills, more than 50% of my take-home pay. Okay, well, if it's 60, save 35, use your 60 on your bills, and you're not going to have enough in your discretionary spending. You're going to say, Dave, it's not going to have fun. Well, pick up that extra shift, pick up that extra job, sell a whole bunch of shit to be able to find that extra money to give you that joy so you can go out and spend a little bit. But always remember, the season that we're in savings season. We need to be super, super focused for 6, 12, 18, 24 months. Once you get through this, then obviously it opens up a little bit more because we put money towards the investment property. The investment property is growing in value. You don't need to be as scrupulative in the amounts you save and those extra shifts that you work. But savings, 30 to 35%, anything above is good, anything below, what can we do? Discretionary should not be more than 15% of your take-home salary, in my honest opinion. If it is, rein it back in. If it's lower, great, fantastic. Bills should try to get them around 50% of your take-home pay after tax, so on a 90 grand salary, you're getting $2,700 fortnightly pay, meaning $1,350. If you're looking at that saying, there's no way my bills are $1,350, there's so much more. List the bills out, review them, cutthroat, be creative with your accommodation. Be creative with your accommodation, and if you need that money, take it out of your discretionary spending. And if you say, I want money to enjoy my life, okay, but work hard for it. Work that extra shift, work that weekend job. You might do one on, one off. One fortnight, I'm working hard, I'm making 500. The next fortnight I can have off. And I know I've got 250 to spend, and I've still saved 250. Then the next fortnight I'll work, I can spend 250 that week. I can spend 250 that fortnight or that week, and then I've pocketed another 250. So there's opportunities there to be able to do it. I mean, I've only used a $25 hourly rate. You can obviously get more than that, which means you won't have to work an additional 20 hours, but this is how you make it work, guys. This is the amount of effort that you need to put in. This, in my opinion, is These are your percentage splits. So your bills, trying to get them as low as possible. Get creative with your accommodation if you live out of home, and be savings mode for 6 to 12, 18 months. If you have any questions, thoughts, theories, anything you want to share with me, let me know in the comments. Find me on social media and happy to have a chat. But for me, and it'll obviously, I'll love to tell the story one day, but for me, it was having 3 to 4 part-time jobs or jobs on the side. It was graphic design. It was weekend jobs. It was all those jobs that filled up the time that I was going to spend anyway. It was playing soccer. It was coaching soccer. It was all those sorts of things where I could pull and bring in more money to be able to offset and put as much in savings as possible, and then get really creative around what my bills are, how can I avoid them, how can I bring them down. Let me know your thoughts, theories, questions, emotions. As always, I'll see you tomorrow.